in case you need to go over any of this again. So, no, don't end the meeting. I just want you to move out of my way. So, here, I am hoping that Zoom is showing the page. Oh, you little punk. I'm talking to Zoom.
There it is. Okay, we can see it now.
Okay, I don't need to look at all this other stuff, though. All right. So the background, if you're not familiar with the story to this point, is that, amazingly, Angelou's parents sent her and her little brother, or her big brother,
It's
older brother. So there were like 3 and 5. They were in California. The parents were getting divorced. The mother had a career that required travel, and possibly the father did as well. So they wanted to send the children to Stamps, Arkansas, to the grandparents for stability and for the grandparents to take care of them. And they pinned little notes on their clothing that said, please make sure these children get to so-and-so at this address, Stamps, Arkansas. And they put the children on the train, and they had to change trains several times, and various people fed them. I mean, probably I should have just used that amazing story as the close reading Black Love, but it's so blatantly obvious because, first of all, the first guy who took their tickets, the porter on the first train, these people came. Can you imagine this happening today? You're a porter on a train. You take people's tickets. A couple walks up to you with 2 little kids with notes pinned to them and says, hey, these children need to go on a 3-day train trip that involves several train changes at different stations. And yeah, they don't have anything with them, but we know it'll be okay. So can you watch them until the first station, and then we're sure that somebody else at the next stop will make sure they get on the right train. I mean, that story completely blows my mind. I would like to try that with my own children. Because I know it wouldn't work. No. But can you imagine in this day and age doing something like that? And she talks about how people took care of them and people shared food with them, and it wasn't scary. So that's just an amazing, and I don't think she just tells that story because it just happened. I think she tells that story for us to understand how during segregation, African American culture was all bound up together very closely, and people would really help each other. So I find that story just so astounding. She goes to Arkansas, and her grandmother is a property owner and owns a store, so her grandmother's quite successful within the community. Even during the Great Depression, she finds a way to get by at her store, even though she sells to Black people who have no money. She figures it out. She keeps her store. She keeps her land. And then when Angela's a couple years older, the parents come to see them. And it's kind of stressful for the children because, like kids, they're like, wait a minute, why haven't we seen him for a long time? Why can we bear, what's going to happen? But the mother ultimately decides that she is going to take the children, that they're old enough now that they can come and live with her. So there's still some ambivalence at this point in the story in terms of how the children feel about their mother, but I kind of admire their mother for doing this because she wanted to have a career. She was independent, and she knew that her family would take care of her children, and so that's what she did. I think that in itself is an example of why Maya Angelou became Maya Angelou. So this is her description of her mother. And this sentence alone is just really stunning. To describe my mother would be to write about a hurricane in its perfect power, or the climbing, falling colors of a rainbow. We had been received by her mother and had waited on the edge of our seats in the overfurnished living room. Dad talked easily with our grandmother, as white folks talk to blacks, unembarrassed and unapologetic. Now he isn't white, but many of her family members can pass for white. So we were both fearful of Mother's coming and impatient at her delay. It is remarkable how much truth there is in the two expressions, struck dumb and love at first sight. My mother's beauty literally assailed me. Her red lips, Mama said it was a sin to wear lipstick. Mama is their grandmother, so, of course, the slightly rebellious mother who lives in the country and is a church-going woman, has a daughter who's a blues singer, jazz singer, and wears red lipstick and is very glamorous. Nonetheless, her red lips split to show even white teeth, and her fresh butter color looked see-through clean. Her smile widened her mouth beyond her cheeks, beyond her ears, and seemingly through the walls to the street outside. I was struck dumb. I knew immediately why she had sent me away. She was too beautiful to have children. I had never seen a woman as pretty as she who was called Mother Bailey. She was called Mother, sorry. Bailey, that's her brother, on his part fell instantly and forever in love. I saw his eyes shining like hers. He had forgotten the loneliness and the nights when we had cried together because we were unwanted children. He had never left her warm side or shared the icy wind of solitude with me. She was his mother dear, and I resigned myself to his condition. They were more alike than she and I, even he and I. They both had physical beauty and personality. So I figured it figured. I think that the tone going in between her description of herself as a child in awe and her reflective adult tone of kind of insouciant, like, so this is what happened, no biggie. I figured, just kind of rolls with it. I don't think there's anything awry when she talks about how in love with Mother Bailey was. I think Bailey just immediately forgives her and possibly, is the favorite child. But the ways that she describes her mother are pretty epic. She's got the face that sailed 1,000 ships, like Helen of Troy. So, first of all, if we want to think about family love and a close reading of this passage in terms of the deep ties and acceptance and perhaps a slightly different form of love between a mother and a child in this passage, what would you pull out to indicate that difference? And I'll rephrase this too, because it's part of one of the fill in the blanks. I think we could say in their unconventional relationship, the intense love between Angelou and her mother comes through with descriptions such as, and I'll put that in words too, so y'all can think about it and how you would finish that sentence. I don't like it when it cuts off my first line. we go. So here's what we're looking for in this passage. I'll try to get them side by side. It's difficult to look at their relationship as conventional. I would definitely concede. However, okay.
Is that real pig Latin?
Do they? I don't know whether they do speak real pig Latin. I meant to look that up, but there were children at my house stealing my baked goods. I think so. I think they did figure out pig Latin. Do you recall, Devin? If she and her brother were.
I think it was like a version they created themselves. Like they took pieces of actual pig Latin and then
Yeah.
added stuff themselves.
Okay, so there, it fits. So what you're looking for are the ways she describes her mother, the specific phrases that are going to indicate a different kind of mother-daughter love than we usually experience in literature. So just pick one of the descriptive phrases that you think makes sense, and you can put that in your fill in the blanks.
Now I will say on the Zoom meeting we can't see that because you're sharing just the book.
Let me try again to share the full screen. Sorry about that. Maybe it'll stop fussing and let me share the whole screen again. I think it will. Is that better?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So, Clay, what phrase would you pick? What phrase do you think is one of the most intriguing ways that she describes her mother? But if I don't hear, it might be my fault. No, I don't know.
Hold on, I'm
Oh,
reading
that's
it.
okay.
I'm trying to
Okay.
get ready for two things right now and stay
Okay. Well,
on top of things.
I'll let you off the hook for a second. Candace, Did you notice one?
Oh, I have
Is
mine.
that a way that she described her mother?
Yeah.
I did. 1 second.
Okay, Clay has his. So
Oh,
I'll
here you
come.
go. My mother's beauty literally assailed me.
Yeah, assailed. And so we'd have to look that. Yeah, I have to look up specifically what assailed means because it's almost like it was. It's something that like chases you almost, right? So
Let's see.
Mine is she was too beautiful to have children because that is like a very subjective like way of thinking and
yeah,
like a woman's beauty defines that she should, like needs to stay untouched, I guess, or like she was too beautiful to go through childbirth, or it was like that she was so beautiful that being a mother was hampering her from something other, like some other feminine identity.
I think the sentence before that, I immediately knew why she had sent me away, was the one that stuck out to me because
yeah,
when you have especially a younger, like beautiful mother, it you look at her through a different lens than what other people would like look at their mothers. Most people, when they look at their mothers, are like, oh, she's a mom. She has no identity outside of being
yeah,
something that takes care of me. And then Maya being able to immediately identify why her mother would not want her around.
yeah,
And being able to understand it too is something that
yeah.
I think is very interesting. Being able to understand my mom sent me away for her purpose.
And we have to be really careful about the voice markers here because are the comments that she's making an adult reflecting back on who her mother really was, or are they a child's immediate perception of and pointing
Well, it
out?
seems to me that it's an adult reflecting back to childhood because I don't think any child would even use these type of words like her beauty assailed me.
Right.
I mean, like she was threatened by her mother's beauty, and then it seemed like she also has low self-esteem because she acknowledges her mother's beauty and her brother's beauty, and then her lack of beauty.
Yeah. That's true. However, that I think we are hearing the beautiful description of an adult reflecting of a child's initial perception, and
Mm-hmm.
I think you can read it positively because from my perspective, when I was this age, I had a book that was in English and Polish called My Mother is the Most Beautiful Woman in the World. So, and my mother is Polish American. And it had this little Polish mother who, looking back, probably wasn't the most beautiful woman in the world. But as a child of, 7 or 8, most children do really believe that. My children still believe it, even with my dasher and my beard. I don't think it's going to last much longer, but it's insane.
Well, as a child, I always thought my mom was really pretty and really beautiful, and I like obviously loved her. She loved me.
Yeah.
But like as I got older, I realized how like you look at your mother through a very different lens,
Yeah.
especially when you can start having conversations about what it was for her to grow up or for her to be an individual outside of you.
Mhm.
You start to realize, oh, you weren't just my mom. Like it wasn't just special for me.
Right.
You were this person outside of me.
Yeah.
You weren't just here for me. You were here for
Yeah.
other things.
So it's kind of mixed in together. It's bittersweet when she says she was too beautiful to be a mother and I understood why she left me.
Yeah.
But I think purely from the child's perspective, it's like, did you ever have fantasies when you were little that you would find out you were really a princess or something foolish like that? So it's almost like she has discovered the most beautiful woman in the world, and that's her mother. And I think there's the fantasy element of a child's perspective of their mother excuses her mother's absence.
Because it's easier to say, oh, because of her being so beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
she had to leave me. Like, I'm justifying why she left, so I can
Yeah.
leave her.
And children have jacked up reasons for explaining everything. So I think we could use that phrase. And like, of course, retrospectively, there's a little bit more of Angela herself understanding this was a glamorous woman who was a performer. Angela herself will become a performer. So, and there's also the recognition that a mother doesn't just have to spend her life in the laundry room. Every time my children say, "Mom, where are you?" I say, "Where do you think I am?" And I'm always in the frickin' laundry room. I don't get to wear a red lipstick and run around in nightclubs, but I did when I was younger. I just chose to, put things in a different order. So I think we could say different things. I think there's things that you can read two ways in each of these. Now, the hurricane in its perfect power is purely a statement of awe. However, if you pair that with this sentence about her mother's smile, and try to think a little bit from a child's perspective. When your mother smiles, it starts when you're an infant. A baby smiles. It is the most monumental event in a child's life to have your mother smile at you. The younger you are, the more so that's true. And it's not like she wasn't cared for or she felt unwanted. She was incredibly well cared for by her grandmother and had really interesting experiences there. But, she's kind of torn between loving her intensely and having missed her so much. There's some pain there. It's bittersweet. But when she says she was a hurricane in its perfect power, then we move forward to the line about her smile. And just don't worry about the words, but listen to this. I have to take a breath. Her smile widened her mouth beyond her cheeks, beyond her ears, and seemingly through the walls to the street outside. Does that sound like a hurricane wind? Isn't that a kind of really windy? No, Brandy? Okay. Pick a different.
Well, just the imagery of just
Yeah. I mean, the imagery is almost like a cartoon, but the flow of that run-on sentence, and Angela knows how to write sentences with standard written English, and she can get away with it. I think the lack of commas there, most people couldn't get away with, but the breadth of that, it's a huge gust of words that describes her mother's smile, like a perfect hurricane. It's that power. So when you're reading closely, always do try to read out loud. And when you notice something like losing your breath trying to read a sentence, that's for a reason. It's because there's some kind of effect that the language tries to work on you. I knew why she had sent me away. She was too beautiful to have children. If you think of a little child saying that, they're not going to be upset about that. Because if they don't already know, think, believe their mother's the most beautiful person in the world, can you imagine a little kid saying, "Oh, you couldn't just do these stupid things that Mama does. You are too amazing and too awe-inspiring." What specifically does assailed mean? Does that mean threatened?
It's like a synonym for assault. Like you're assaulted.
Like an assailant, yeah. There are also, so she doesn't say assaulted, she says assailed, which sounds more like sailing. I think that word choice we could say something of. It threatened her, it shook her. It was overwhelming to her. But I think saying assailed makes your mind go a different place, imaginatively, from what the real meaning of the word is. And there also might be even more secondary meanings. I love looking up words. I actually owned a condensed Oxford English dictionary until I was in graduate school, and then I just moved around too much to drag that thing. But
Kind of like overwhelmed.
Yeah. Because there's an assailant in a crime. So violent attack, an unpleasant feeling that's sudden, criticism, but there's even more. To leap, okay, jumped her. So there's different, it wasn't as commonly used word, but it was more used previously. And let's see if we have instant access. Because the fancier the dictionary you look at, the more you find out about the word. Let's see. Yeah, she might have experienced some unpleasant things. As Candace pointed out, she doesn't think she's as beautiful as her mother. She feels abandoned by her mother. So those things are happening, but at the same time, I think she might be feeling things that are more about criticism, but there are other things that are more about awe. Let's see if there's anything closer to awe. Nope. So that's the coming of emotions. All right. So not anything that's more about awe, but it can be an emotional, overwhelming experience too. But I just think the sounds of the hurricane, I think this paragraph is also about a hurricane. And that is the conceit that she uses for her mother. Her mother's also a singer, so imagine the breath her mother has to have and like the power of her lungs to hold notes, to sing long verses like that. Her brother is more like them. Her brother doesn't even stop to think, wait, why did she leave me? But I also love, and it's the beauty that assails her. So to a certain extent, having a mother that's so beautiful that she can't be with you would also offend you and feel unfair. Maybe my mother used to tell her mother that she was too fancy and she liked her grandmother better. Her mother wasn't a motherly type mother because she couldn't cuddle on her lap, because my grandmother was thin and pretty, very pretty. But you don't think about cuddling up to a supermodel. It seems like they'd poke you a lot, right? But the grandmother tends to be more squishy. So anyway, this other part of the description that I like, even white teeth and her fresh butter color looked see-through clean. She is a dewdrop exhaled from the sky. So first of all, fresh butter.
What is that referring to?
Butter.
Her fresh butter?
Her skin color. Yeah, her mother has a kind of light, buttery complexion, and she's, has the kind of olive yellowish tone that butter would have. So fresh butter color looked see-through clean. So what would be see-through clean? What are you going to clean until you can see through it?
A window.
Yeah. So that perfect cleanliness and transparency and visibility is also kind of like about purity and perfection. The fresh butter. Sorry for continually assailing you with all of these stories, but when my best friend was pregnant with my godson, she didn't find out the gender, so we referred to them as bacon. And the theory was everybody loves bacon, and bacon would be good for a boy or a girl. What can be wrong with bacon? But then when she was pregnant for my goddaughter, she also didn't know the gender, so I was like, okay, this one's butter. So I referred to the baby as butter, but they were over the food things. But butter, what's better than butter? It's the real thing. It is rich, it's lustrous. If you have a buttery, they will say people have buttery skin because it has that smooth, luminescent consistency, but also the kind of dewdrop purity. Dewdrop is a term now that people use to talk about the luminescence of some not even really of real people's skin now, but of makeup products they might use. So, yeah, fresh butter and if you look through the window, she's so clean, but also seeing through something, it's as if there are no secrets. It's kind of a purity image. So I would argue that suggests a little forgiveness. Then we get to the big sentence about her smile, which is almost comical. If it's like that was something that would happen in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Let's see. What's his name finally catches Wile E. Coyote and he smiles so big it goes right out into the street. You can envision that, but it's a child's point of view. It's a childish and playful description of her smile, and it goes right through the walls, kind of like you can't keep her in the house. Her smile goes through the walls. Her skin is so beautiful you can see through it perfectly outside. So if the containment of the windows and keeping inside the house or the walls, if she can break through these with her smile and her beautiful skin, she's too beautiful to be in this domestic space. I don't know that Angelou consciously was thinking about the see-through clean of the windows and the breaking through the walls when she wrote it, but I think there might even be a slightly subconscious connection of her mother just being too big to be in the house, too beautiful to be in the house. Or maybe even from the child's point of view. I was struck dumb. Now, some of you might know she was struck dumb later in her life, so that's a little bit foreboding, but I want to skip that because I think it's easier to focus on the way she describes her mother. I had never seen a woman as pretty as she was who was called mother. So, Shamari, what part caught your attention the most? Shamari or Mary? What would you put in your Mad Lib?
I guess with the sentence, I feel like one part that okay, I'm trying to stick to one. I guess my statement, I think that kind of caught my attention in relevance to the sentence says, I had never seen a woman as pretty as she was who she called mother.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of I feel like that kind of stood out to me, especially with what y'all were talking about earlier of like perspective, like adult kind of like looking back how we would see things as children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like it kind of plays into the part like how much she kind of like saw her mother when she was younger.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And she has, of course, seen other mothers who are pretty, but there is a sense of superiority, maybe. Let me try to do this how MLA wants us to. When you have a quotation within a quotation, you substitute the quotation in the quotation for an apostrophe that will then turn into a single quotation mark rather than double. But anyway, never seen a woman as pretty as she was who was called mother. So that is an implicit comparison with all of her friends' mothers. So it's definitely how she sees her. Shamara, do you think for a little kid it would be worth it to have the most beautiful mother? She is kind of a competitive kid.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I think that's why it kind of like stood out to me, like where she says like it say who she was called mother, because it's more of like kind of like how you were saying, like of course everybody else has mothers, but I think it's kind of like implying that like that she's kind. It's like a all of like, oh, that's my mother. If that kind of
Yeah.
makes sense. Hopefully, I'm
Yeah.
not wording that weird.
Yeah, it's more of the perfection and of the best, and I don't think she would want any other. Now the comparison with her brother is tricky too, because he immediately like doesn't even question things. She still has she's still aware that this is the mother who left her, and she's just telling herself a story about why that's okay. But he had forgotten the loneliness in the nights when we had cried together because we were unwanted children. He had never left her warm side or shared the icy wind of solitude with me. Well, in fact, he had. He's just forgotten that. The icy wind of solitude. We got a lot of wind here. You definitely could be assailed by an icy wind of solitude. And it would make sense whether or not we looked up assailed. At the same time, he had never left her warm side. It's warm next to her. The coldness was the separation from her. So her mother is also here. Like if you have an object of desire, and for psychologically, if you wanted to like be Freudian or use psychology, which I'm not asking you to do whatsoever, but you could say, you know, the child's first object of love and desire is the mother. And therefore, the loss or the pain the child feels, the fear when separated from the mother is completely natural and normal. Her brother completely forgets about that and is just completely in heaven. She still remembers it. Her brother will call her mother dear. I resign myself to his condition. She's just going to go with it and be enamored and in love with her mother and not continue to question things. So by the end of this paragraph, you kind of get the idea that in a short time, she too forgave her mother. It was more of a resigned forgiveness, but she goes along with it. He just did it so much faster because they were more alike, so I figured it figured. And keep in mind that children's explanations for things have to be simple. So I figured it figured. So it's people who write about childhood trauma might be a little puzzled by this, or people who know a lot about childhood trauma, because she's just like, okay, whatever, I'm going to just go along with my brother. She's perfect. At the same time, I think the grown-up Angelou is telling us she couldn't be kept in the house. She wasn't like other mothers. And that's not a negative statement. And actually, by the end, she dismisses the pain that her mother's life caused her because she's telling us that this was an extraordinary mother, a perfect hurricane of a mother. And we get the idea she wouldn't want any other. And there might be a sense of pride that her mother does what she does and isn't just like the other ones hanging out the laundry. Me. That's, you know. So, you know, my children did used to have arguments with their classmates about whether their mother could have a doctorate. Because I am the only mother with a doctorate. Not a doctorate, a doctorate. Mary? Are you buying this story that we're telling about her
Yes.
mother? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What part stands out to you more?
Well, I know you skipped over the I was struck dumb.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I guess she was just amazed about her mother's beauty that she was speechless.
Yeah. That is a sense of awe and speechlessness. So that tells us that her mother's beauty is something transcendent. Because children never shut up. I mean, maybe she was told to be seen and not heard sometimes. My children never shut up. You know that. We saw that earlier today. Boy, I wish I was so beautiful that my child would be struck dumb even for 5 minutes. But anyway, yes. The struck dumb there, I think, is probably, again, more of a sense of awe and wonder than actually being struck.
Especially because this woman is practically a stranger to her. Like, there's familiarity there, but
Yeah.
she's still a stranger. She doesn't know her. She doesn't know what she does. day in and day out. Like,
Yeah.
so there is a separation there. So to see the person who kind of was
Yeah.
supposed to be there.
But we know she was anxious and excited. And if
Yeah.
you're anxious and excited and not understanding why your mother was missing, then you find out it's because she's a goddess. You know, that's what a kid wants. Because kids need straightforward things like that. She's, so yeah, there is some lingering sense of, oh well, I'm going to go along with this. My brother gets her even better because he is as beautiful. He knows what that is like. So, in terms of our fill in the blanks, when you are using really specific examples like this, and I would recommend to just pick one of these. Then you want to rephrase it in your own words. Let's say she as a child.
It's 12 o'clock.
And I would also add, because of the kind of competing perspectives in this, that, you know, you might describe a little bit earlier. So I think in between the child and the reflective adult, we go from stunningly beautiful to beautiful to be a mother, no wonder she couldn't stay in this house, to as an adult, that absence and that not being in the house and being uncontainable make her mother really badass. You know, she was a performer. She was someone who struck out on her career. And this is in like, Angela just died recently. Angela, it's pronounced Angela, but I'm not used to saying it the right way. She died, I think, within the past 10 years, when she was probably 90. So it was probably in the 20s. Although she's already described going through the Depression with her grandmother. So, you know, maybe it's the 30s, maybe it's the early 40s. Same time period, incidentally, as Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye and the description of the mother.
Sorry, she passed away in 2014.
Okay. That is just within the last 10 years, so
And
I was
she
right by her.
born in 1928.
Yeah, okay. So she might be 10 years old even by now. I'm glad that I kicked that kid out. She would embarrass me with this. And she would be like, Mom, even though you're old, I told Emmeline. Okay. So essentially, if you just pick one of these phrases with her description of her mother, this is your evidence. You get a whole paragraph out of this. Now, kind of backing up, then, what kind of thesis statement about Black love might you have an introductory paragraph or two about to explain here? Also, in the late 30s, early 40s, there were white women who were Rosie the Riveter who left the home to work because of the war effort. But Angelou's mother probably did that even before World War II started. So that makes her kind of groundbreaking in her career. But there's also a difference between a housewife temporarily working for the war effort and a woman who divorces her husband because she's going to be a singer. To a certain extent, the options for African American women in that time period were to be married to someone who owned land or to come from a landowning family so that you could be a librarian, a nurse, a teacher, have a career, or marry someone who owns land so that you could be the perfect housewife who keeps the perfect home and, you know, is all inside the house like those other mothers who could be called mother, according to Angelou. However, for families who didn't own land, and for families who didn't have as much money, very often the kinds of work that women would have to do were completely unglamorous. You know, hard work like washing without a washing machine, making those windows clean. So her mother's pretty extraordinary in breaking the mold, both for black women and for white women in the time period. But I think that is something that we might get a little bit more from the grown-up. But that said, you don't have to say that this is a paragraph about the extraordinary character of black love. You could argue that she's acting like any child would act in terms of how they love their mother. As an adult reflecting back on a mother who left the house to be a blues singer, not very many white women did that, especially not with children. So, I mean, I'm sure some did, but there is kind of a more iconic example of black women blues singers. I don't think Ma Rainey had children. I don't think Bessie Smith had children of her own. Billie Holiday didn't have children. In the movie Bessie, she adopts a child, but I don't know how historically correct that is. Ma Rainey didn't have children. I'm not sure about the other less controversial blues women who lived in the same time period. They might have had more conventional lives, but you know, her mother is pretty spectacular. So if you want to talk about her looking back on her mother and possibly feeling pride for her mother, knowing everything that her mother had to avoid to be the woman that she was, that is a pretty specific example of something that happened within African American culture. You know, these women who could be blues singers and do everything her mother did. But you could also just say, you know, sure, her mother was really cool and really path-breaking in her career, but I still don't get the black love thing. That's okay. Or you could say, yeah, this is black love because it was black women who were able to become these really unconventional performers and break the mold of motherhood, break the mother of, you know, and that her easy acceptance of her mother is a different kind of relationship that comes from women who, you know, very, very well might have to work anyway and have a different life experience than most women of other races. So I'm gonna, I liked something on another page too, so let me open that. It's not showing me my downloads. They're all Adobe's, but I think I have too many things happening at once. So she and her brother move with their mother, and it's no joke, in my opinion. I think this is going to be the next one. Nope. It's no joke, in my opinion, for her mother to come back and get those young kids as soon as they're old enough to kind of babysit themselves. I think that demonstrates a lot of mother love. How come I can only open this page now? I'm sorry. Okay, let's just look at this page. For one thing, she goes to a completely different kind of school. And this silly thing better let me rotate it, because the rotate thing used to be over here. Oh, come on, people. I'll put this in a better order, I hope. I do not need. All right, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to read sideways, I guess. So anyway, she goes to a school in Chicago, and they enroll in Toussaint Louverture Grammar School, and they're struck by the ignorance of their classmates, which is kind of funny. Just pointing out how well cared for they've been and well educated down south. And the students were backward even in the city schools. The teachers were more formal than those we knew in Stamps, and although they didn't whip their students with switches, they gave them licks in the palms of their hands with rulers. And Stamps teachers were much friendlier, but that was because they were imported from the Arkansas Negro colleges, and since we had no hotels or rooming houses in town, they had to live with private families. If a lady teacher took company or didn't receive any mail or cried alone in her room at night, by the week's end, even the children discussed her morality, her loneliness, and her other failings generally. It would have been near impossible to maintain formality under a small town's invasions of privacy. St. Louis teachers, on the other hand, tended to act very sedity and talk down to their students from the lofty heights of education and white folks' enunciation. They, women as well as men, all sounded like my father with their ers and ers. They walked with their knees together and talked through tight lips, as if they were afraid to let their sound out, as if they were as afraid to let their sound out as they were to inhale the dirty air that the listener gave off. So the contrast between the sedity urban teachers and the somewhat joking nosiness and familiarity of the country teachers is another example, I think, of the community love and closeness, because the teachers who are in the city are, because of their education, are assimilating to white culture, and they're assimilationists. The teachers in the country are living in people's homes and have no privacy. But Angelou and her brother are 2 grades ahead of the city kids. So the warmth and the love and commitment and the closeness of the teachers who are close to the kids in that school, in the town, who are like family, seems to have better educational outcomes. That's a teeny tiny bit of a stretch, but I think that if you talk to Dr. Walter Lee, he's the education professor. He recently did a talk about the care classroom. I think you would get a similar interpretation in that respect as well. So you can use this other example of the contrast between a more traditional Southern Black culture and community and a more assimilationist, cold Northern urban community. And that sometimes it's too sticky and too close down in the hot South, stuck in the same house together, telling people's business, but the outcomes are better.
Well, later something that I noticed later on in the book. There's the part where they bring them back from California to live with Mama again,
Uh-huh.
and they were asking Bailey and Maya about like what the city was like and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses all of these like black stereotypes to describe people in the city, and
Yeah.
he's like, oh, they're so rich, they're so like almost like what we talked about at the beginning of this course with the whole
The
like,
Gilded Age.
the whole
Yeah.
Gilded Age, the like bourgeoisie,
Yeah.
and there's these uppity blacks and then the like lower class
Yeah.
ones, and so he takes all of that information back, just kind of like saying, oh, they kind of turned their nose up at us, that's why we came home.
Yeah.
And Mama was like, well, you don't need to lie, we don't
Yeah. Because leaving home, you know, leaving your culture and your roots is going to sever your connections to the community to a certain extent. Not to say that there aren't communities in urban spaces, because there are, but in this early phase of the Great Migration,
Mhm.
possibly not as much as we might find in some places now. But yeah, there's a sense of a
12:15.
particular kind of black community that is the real thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. I will write up some more specific instructions for this and share these documents and put the pages in case you want to look back at the specific pages. And obviously this isn't due today. I was just trying to follow the rule where what we're going to talk about has a due date. It's not due today. I still don't know when grades are due, but you have at least a week to do it if you want to do this version of the paper. Yeah. And most people are up around 70 anyway. Now, and you two are also going to do the podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna do the 3 papers and then the podcast.
You don't have to do 3 papers.
I thought that was what the assignment.
I know English majors are bad at math, my dear, but you have to do at least 1 paper in a podcast.
Okay, well then
You
I'll
don't have
this
to do all
paper
3.
and
Because
then
if I remember correctly, you only need about
I
20
think I'm at,
points.
like 76 or something.
Yeah.
Like that. So I'll do the last exam
Yeah.
and then the podcast and the paper. I'm gonna do this paper. I
Okay.
love this book.
If you want to be like your classmates who have over 110 points, and there are many, I'm not mad. I always really
I just wanna get
appreciate.
an A in the class, so if I do the
You don't have to do that much to get to A, but I think maybe some people didn't know that they were already, because Blackboard is so annoying, that they're already over the hump. But a lot of times, people just do the test just for fun, like you do a quiz on Facebook. And that's fine, because nothing can ever hurt your grade. So, have fun with it all. So, recording podcasts. Next Tuesday is the 10th. No, yes. And I have a meeting with the dean at a time. So, is our final exam schedule, which I haven't looked at yet, because I think that would be the time when we would record. Because you're theoretically not supposed to have other commitments at that time.
I'm good. Yeah, that works.
So I'll send invitations. If it doesn't work, we can be flexible about it. I will send you questions
Okay.
in advance, kind of let you know the format and the kind of things we'll be talking about. And it's pretty casual, but when I put people on the spot and say, okay, you really have to tell me how smart you are now, people do great. Okay? You will. If not, you just fake it till you make it. Just read passages you like, Yeah, I will let you know. And then I don't know that Clay and Shamari, if you want to do that, Mary or Candace or anybody, if you want to jump in on the podcast, I might even make like a podcast video. And if you want me to, I'll keep my facial hair in my Dasher costume. Or we could all download filters and have funny avatars. It's so much fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to be part of the podcast. That would, a good way to earn points. Sorry, I'm driving. There's probably a lot of background noise right now. But yeah, please let me know what I need to do to prepare for that
I will.
podcast, and I'm absolutely in.
Okay.
She's gonna send
Yeah, I'll send you some information.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And if you want the information, Mary or Candace, would you like to join us? I certainly welcome everybody to. But if you have other classes and 10 billion other things to do, you might not want to. I'll tell you what, I'll just send the invitation to everybody. And if you feel like it, even if you don't need it, you're welcome to join us. But you'll just be under less pressure than Brandy, who I'm going to be looking at like this. You know how intimidating I am. All right, everyone, have a wonderful holiday, and I know I'll be able to see some of you next semester. And Brandy can't get away from me because I'm her advisor anyway. So, good luck with all of your work, and reach out if you need anything.
I have a quick question for you.
Uh-huh.
You don't have to, it's kind of last second, but if you wanted to look over the little bit I have of my capstone.
I will.
I don't know if I told you, but I had a computer issue, and it happened the night of Thanksgiving, and I was, Black Friday, I was in the middle of all that at Geek Squad, and they were like, okay, so what we did was we took all this stuff and put this on an external hard drive, and you'll have to re-download it all, but we uninstalled everything on your computer and put it back on there. So have fun downloading all this stuff back. So I spent all Friday like downloading all my stuff. My mom, I was dog sitting, my mom had to come over and be like, okay, you're fine, it's fine, we're fine, everything's okay.
Yeah.
So I've added more since the copy that I sent you, but it's only 4 pages, so
Yeah.
you can judge, it's fine. I got it. But
I know you'll get it done eventually.
Finishing it up and getting that done, so
Okay.
having to regurgitate everything.
Yeah, and I'll send people more harassing messages, and if you want me to tell you what to do, like you're much more used to being told what to do with no choices. I'm happy to do that. Okay, unless you're taking the class pass fail, but you know. I mean, you also have perfect attendance, so I do need to take that into account.
Take what I can do. I've just been trying to get all my other stuff out of the way since you're the
Yeah.
only one who's stick
Oh,
with me.
That's
Yeah.
what I've been doing. I have to email Dr. Robbins and be like, listen, just wondering, what's my grade gonna be? Because, so sorry, I have had to deal with this capstone project that's gonna end my